All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Simple Scrapper Live. We are kicking off a brand new series, and this one is called The Festival of Finishing. I am so excited because I know this is something that so many of you need. You are craving to have more projects finished, to feel that sense of satisfaction and accomplishment, especially as we approach the end of the year. The Festival of Finishing is a month-long celebration of not procrastinating anymore and actually getting things done. And of course, when we work on it together, it's that much more fun and you can get that momentum going to finish one or maybe more projects. All right, my name is Jennifer Wilson, and if you are new here, this is Simple Scrapper, and each week I host a live show here on Crowdcast. So if you are watching on Facebook or YouTube, why don't you jump over to that Crowdcast link where you can RSVP for the Festival of Finishing and join our community live. We've got quite the chat room going today, and there's also an opportunity to ask questions live. The Festival of Finishing has 4 live sessions. We're doing something a little bit differently with this series. So you have one RSVP for the entire festival, and that signs you up for all 4 live events. Plus, I'll be emailing you some additional content, like a free worksheet and some more information on how you can finish more of the projects you start and start more projects that are totally finishable. But today we're kicking things off with a big confession from me. So I started Simple Scrapper in 2008 as a way to document my own journey as a memory keeper. I started actually as a digital scrapbooker because I thought that was going to be the way to simplify scrapbooking in a modern world for busy women like us who want to enjoy this hobby but also have a lot going on and need to figure out how it's all going to fit together. But it turned out that digital scrapbooking was just one of the ways that you can simplify the hobby. And that's what we do here at Simple Scrapper, is helping you figure out what is that unique combination of project formats and approaches and techniques that's simple for you, that helps you stay motivated and get projects finished. And at the time when I started Simple Scrapper, I was starting to nose around in the online community, and I discovered the December Daily Project and one of Allie's very first albums. And so if you're not familiar with December Daily, it's a project from Allie Edwards, and you can learn all about that on her website at allieedwards.com. And it's something that I felt very excited to jump into from the very beginning of being a scrapbooker. And so today I'm going to talk you in a little bit, we'll walk through my history of December Daily projects, but then tease apart why I kind of fell apart the past couple years. So the title of this session is Confession, I'm a December Daily Flunkie. The past 3 years of projects I have completely unfinished. I have done tiny little baby steps in getting started, but they're nowhere near finished. There's not photos printed out. And it's kind of a mess. But we'll get into more of that, and I have some thoughts on why. But the first thing I want to do here is, again, if you are joining us live on Facebook or YouTube, please jump over to Crowdcast. And if you are here on Crowdcast, I want to encourage you to hit the share button. You can share this event publicly with anyone you like who might be interested in joining us for the festival. So with our 4 sessions of the festival, there'll be the live sessions every Tuesday at 1 p.m. in our regular Simple Scrapper live slot, but those recordings will be available to watch later. So all month long for the whole next 30 days, whenever anyone joins, they can catch up with previous sessions and already be signed up for our upcoming sessions. And so the next thing I want to do is to share the top 4 reasons why projects don't get finished. And this is something that I've blogged about before, and I've done some classes on, but I really think it's important to revisit this because these are kind of fundamental truths that as our lives shift and things change, the reason you weren't finishing a project before might be different now. And I know that's the case for me. So the first reason is that you have shiny object syndrome. And what that looks like is starting a lot more projects than you could ever finish. And that's always being attracted to the next new thing, the next class, the new products, and not really staying focused on what it is that you want to create. And that's one of the really big things that we talk about here at Simple Scrappers, is identifying your priorities right now and aligning everything from your purchasing, your content consumption, aligning everything with that so it supports your hobby rather than gets in the way of it. So if you have shiny object syndrome, that could be one reason why some of your projects aren't finished. Number 2 is that you've made the project too complicated. Your vision is too grandiose. There's too many pages, too much embellishment. The level, what complicated means for you could be different for someone else. You may have set out to do a digital album, but you haven't worked on developing your skills in digital yet. So it really depends on your unique situation and what that sense of complication is for you. And in this case, I often recommend stepping back, taking a pause, and looking how you can make a course correction. If you have an unfinished project, it's not finished, it's not going anywhere, but you might be able to find a light at the end of the tunnel by simplifying your strategy going forward. And that might mean your album is not perfect. It's not uniform all the way through, but it will mean that that project is done. And we're going to talk more about that in some of the upcoming sessions in the festival. All right, reason number 3 is continuing on that theme of perfectionism. And in this case, perfectionism can actually be preventing you from starting on that project, whether it's starting it once you've purchased the supplies or starting it again after you've gotten started. So somewhere midpoint, you're having trouble jumping back in because your brain is telling you, oh, well, this is too complicated, or I don't know what to do. I want it to be perfect. I want it to look just right. This is really important. Maybe I should do something else. And so you're waiting for that time in which you feel like the stars are aligned, in which you feel creative, you feel masterful, and you feel like you can move forward. And oftentimes that time doesn't come because life happens and we're always a little bit tired and we're always a little bit thinking about something else. There's never going to be a perfect time at which those stars are going to align. So you have to find ways to keep moving forward anyway and embrace a sense of imperfection to combat those little voices in your head that are telling you to stop. All right, and number 4 is that you've lost your connection and your reason why you started the project in the first place. And I know this sometimes happens to me when I get really excited and I buy all the supplies for a project and I brainstorm how it's going to look and I plan everything out. And by the time I sit down to get started, I'm kind of over it. I have gone through the whole motion in my head and I've already kind of achieved that mental satisfaction without actually doing anything. And then when that happens, that's when you need to reconnect with, why did you want to start this project in the first place? What is the meaning behind it? What are the stories you want to tell? What is the significance of this particular project in your whole body of work or to you personally? Because sometimes some of our projects are going to be fun, creative experiments because we want to express ourselves and try something new. And sometimes they're going to be deeply meaningful and personal and really part of our legacy of scrapbooks. And oftentimes it's going to be a combination of the two. But when you think about, why am I working on this, and really kind of resting into that, it can help you reconnect when you've felt that sense of disconnect in a project that's unfinished. All right, so those are the top 4 reasons. And next week I will have a handout that kind of explain some of those again and send you in the next direction on how you can start mapping out your own finishing plan. But today, I want to focus on December Daily for a little bit. And I have all of my previous projects over here, and I'm going to show you exactly where I am on each one. I do want to say that you have an opportunity here on Crowdcast to ask questions. Looks like we have 3 already queued up, so please hit that Ask a Question button to submit a question that you'd like to see answered today. You can also upvote questions, and I'll go in the order of which they have been voted if we do get too many questions. And of course, we've got some great chat going, folks checking in at the beginning, and I'm so grateful for all of you to be here today as we kick off the Festival of Finishing. All right, so let's dig in here. So this was my first foray, and I will say that everything that you see here was completed by the end of January of the previous year. So between November and January, everything that you see for every project, that's when it was worked on. I've never kind of dipped back in another time in the year. And this would actually be, you know, if I'm able to finish during this session, this would be the first time I will have dipped back in outside of that kind of holiday block. So this is my first album from 2010. It was a chipboard album that came purchased. It has these 3 giant dividers. And you know how I like to categorize things. So I have 3 sections: gratitude, joy, and dreams. The dreams one was actually pretty exciting because I was able to include a selfie from the moment that I had a positive pregnancy test. And that's why that section was called dreams. This definitely wasn't daily at all. And I would say most of mine are not really daily, though they may be numbered. I tend to work on them in spurts. So maybe like a week at a time or 10 days at a time, or, you know, sometimes 3 or 4 days. And I'll definitely have more momentum at the beginning than I have at the end. And I think that's pretty common. I think almost every year I've included the infamous Starbucks cozy, and I have one even from last year. So that was 2010. My first one, and at this time I was a digital scrapbooker, so this was one of the very first paper projects that I ever made. 2011, I would say, was my first like whole hog. I am going to really do this. I did almost all of it kind of live every few days. I was really, really happy with how the cover came out of this one. These first 3, they all say Mary as the title. So it's Mary 2010, 2011, 2012. And I used this interesting approach where, and this was kind of like a pre-Pocket Page era, but I created these grids for every single page. And I thought it made it easy to fill up and to figure out. Because all I had to do was figure out what was going to go into 4 little squares. And then I had a number of full page photos along with my grids. This one, I had a combination of printables. I had some that I used kind of basically making almost my own like chipboard word embellishments, because this is 2011 and those type of products weren't very available back then. I also used my Dymo labeler for some of my own embellishments and some digital word art over my photos. And it's just so funny to think about looking back, and that's only 2011. I've got, you know, flared jeans and, you know, blue toenails and flip-flops. So it almost seems like a lifetime ago. Okay, we got 2012. This was an interesting year because this was the year I sold my own kit. Some of you may remember that we had a simple mini books series where I sold a couple different kits. And of course, again, we have the Starbucks card in there. I would say this one was the most fun to create. Here's a page that was inspired by Allie's album that year. It was also super simple. I definitely kept the design very simple. You can see we have a parallel here with my girl and my guy. There wasn't a ton of journaling. There was a little bit of journaling. I have a journaling tag that will come out. I had just like little bits of journaling, but I focused on photos and having fun with it. I would say it was in this year in which I really started to embrace more of the glittery gold, the sparkly, and maybe that was just trend related, but I really started to think about, oh, I really like these supplies. Maybe I should buy more and really make this the opportunity to jump into more embellishy. Oh, and I just came across this one. I think this was my favorite page in the whole book. because for some reason I just loved the look of the white pen on the photo. And I love how pens write on photos to start with. And just, this was just my favorite spread in the whole page, in the whole album. All right. So those were 3 6x6 albums that I seem to have not very much problem completing. It was, you know, it was fun. It was enjoyable. I didn't have a lot of resistance. And it was interesting. Then kind of things shifted. So that was 2012. 2013, I did a Project Life mini book. This is their mini album that has the 3x4 cards and 4x6 spots. And I've done a couple of these, and I think this is a really simple format. I've seen people use it for guest books. I have one that's about our dog, and my husband actually wrote all the journaling in that one. So this album turned out to be, it was photos and filler cards. There's no journaling. I printed out photos. It's basically a photo album. I printed out photos from the season. This was definitely, my daughter was very young. Here's putting out cookies and milk for Santa. And to me, I felt like this is what was doable in that year. It was a very busy year for us, very full. And all of these cards were actually digital printables that I sent to Persnickety Prints to have printed with the rounded corners. So overall, I was happy that this was done, but I have to say it wasn't as fulfilling either creatively, and it was also perhaps not as fulfilling in the memory keeping sense, because there was no journaling. There's no, I didn't capture any of the associated facts, feelings, and memories related to that particular holiday season. So for that reason, I probably wouldn't take that approach again. But that said, I'm glad that I have what I do have for it. All right. And that's when things kind of started to go downhill. So that was 2013. 2014 involved, I was going to put it inside of my album. And so I have some pocket pages. I have this 6x8 photo of the moment in which my husband told my daughter we were going to see Santa. And then there's the Santa photo on the back. And then I have a very pretty, which I had blogged about, 6x12 insert page. It's just decorative. But then there's nothing in the back. It's not done. And then I have a pocket page with some supplies in it that I had designated. And that's it. There's no photos. It's just some journaling cards that I had pulled to finish this off. So finishing this one would be like an hour, maybe 2. It would be very doable and might be a really good quick win for me to get the momentum going. So that's one of the things I'm going to be thinking about as I'm going into my own finishing here. All right. Then we get into the past 2 years. These are the past 2 years are when I actually purchased kits from Allie, and I love all the supplies. They're so pretty, almost too pretty. I tend to not have problems with like hoarding for the special occasion, except for somehow with the December daily products. So 2 years ago, I got the white album. This is 2015. And I managed to pull together some decorative pages. And I think I have one page done with no journaling, maybe 2 pages. So this was this photo, some pages here with no journaling. I got some numbers going. A couple black and white photos printed, and all the rest is just like the decorative pages. So I think, yeah, like I designated, here's where the photo of our tree is going to go, but that's it. That's all there is. I remember feeling very excited to get going with this, but I don't quite know what happened. It just seemed to fall apart. I can't say this is because we just moved into this house, because that was the previous year. I think the main reason I didn't finish both the past 2 years, was because I didn't really set aside time for it. I didn't make time to make this project that I enjoy so much a priority within my holiday season. I did too much working, and I let that be a priority. And anything that was left over was going to kind of just keeping my head above water with the holiday season. And I thought, I guess in some, that would be kind of my priorities were misaligned. What I would list as my values for the holiday season were not how I was acting. And I wasn't implementing kind of my dreams and my goals for this particular season. All right, and then we have last year, which I have this very pretty, dusty, very pretty, dusty 4x6 album. I thought maybe the smaller size would be more doable, but we got nothing in it. I still think this would be very doable, but I didn't print any photos. What I do have is I selected the star in this card that I thought would make a nice kind of title page. And I do have some memorabilia saved. I have a fortune. I have, of course, my Starbucks sleeve and an Artifact Uprising card that came when I ordered my photo books. So at least I saved those items. I can't say the same for previous years. I might have them somewhere. Now I have dust on me. So that's what it is. I really do feel like a December daily flunky, and I don't necessarily say that in a bad way. It's just the reality. And I think it's important to accept where you are, to understand why you're in that place, some of the roadblocks you faced in the past, and then move forward in two ways. One, how are you going to finish? And then two, what are you going to do differently next time? So for me, I think I'm going to get the ball rolling by finishing the pocket pages from 2014. And then once I'm kind of get going, I will report back next week with which of my albums, 2015 or 16, I'm going to work on. It might be both. I almost kind of want to do both in parallel so that as I have ideas, I can say, oh, well, this is going to be for this album and this is going to be for this album. But is that making it too complicated? So as I get going, I will let you know. And then for the course correction, here's the things that I'm going to do this year. I did order a kit again. I also ordered the kids kit for my daughter to work on with me. And so that's one of the strategies I'm going to use, is that I am going to set aside time, but I'm setting aside time with my daughter as well. And I think that will reduce some of the guilt about scrapbooking just for myself and not spending time with her during the holiday season. I think it's something we can do together, though I'm sure there'll be times when I'm working on my own, but I think that will create some momentum to keep working on it. I'm going to really make it a priority as one of the things I want to do to celebrate the season, that the act of documenting is part of how I'm celebrating. I'm also getting ahead on some of the more, chore-related holiday tasks so that I can feel that space in my calendar to really focus on the project during the month of December. So that's, I'm buying wrapping paper, I'm starting to purchase gifts, I'm really trying to get organized so that I have that mental and emotional bandwidth and even like physical energy to create throughout the December season. And so I want to make this about you now. I want you to tell me, those of you who are on Crowdcast with me, the one project that you want to finish and your very first baby step on that project. So the whole point of the Festival of Finishing is to kind of create this energetic atmosphere of we're all in this together. We can get our projects finished and we can make huge progress in the next month, whether that's finishing or just making great strides. And it's about doing it together so that we can all lift each other up, ride that momentum, share our challenges and troubleshoot along the way, and really support each other in moving forward. And hopefully also working together to learn why this happens and preventing it from happening in the future, or at least buffering it. You're going to have unfinished projects in the future, and so am I. But the more we can understand why, we can devise strategies to trick ourselves into finishing and making sure that the projects we do start are what I call finishable. So I'm going to turn to the questions here. It looks like we have 4 so far. I love that you guys are chatting it up. I can't quite follow it right now, but lots of like lengthy chats. It's so awesome. And let's dig into the questions here. Okay. Judy asks, when you are focused on finishing a specific project, do you just let everything else be put aside, or do you divide your time up? So I will say that I definitely use both strategies, not for the same project, but I'll tell you a little bit about how I use those. So there's certainly times in which I put everything else aside and I really focus. That's often when I will write a sticky note. I'll put it on my desk to remind myself, this is what I'm always going back to. This is the project of focus right now. And I will let other things go. And sometimes that means other things are going to get behind, whether that's personal, professional, or other creative projects, but I will kind of invest my energy in finishing because I want to use that momentum. The more that you have to switch between tasks, the more energy you lose. And so when you can really invest and kind of find that flow on a project, the more progress you can make. But I also realized that multiple hours on a single project are not always feasible. Sometimes they are, but sometimes they're not. And so in that regard, sometimes I will divide my time up and I will set aside, okay, before I do anything else, I'm going to spend 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour on this particular project. And when the time's up, I can stop and move on to something else. And sometimes, even though I want to keep going, I need to stop because I do have other responsibilities, other projects, other things that need to get done. But I'm going to say, I'm going to set aside this block and make it a priority and do it first so that I know that I am moving forward step by step. All right, I hope that was helpful, Judy. All right, Holly has got a good question. How do you decide where to start? I have so many unfinished projects and classes, it is overwhelming. So I always recommend thinking about what is the most exciting project that you want to finish. And the flip side of this is I don't want you to think about what is the most important one. Because when we dive into the importance and the meaning and the depth behind it, that's, I think, where some of those perfectionist demons can come up. That's when we start to feel a lot of resistance. And so we need to find creative flow by doing something that's fun and exciting, maybe with a new product or something that's relatively simple, that has a lot of repetition, so that you can get the ball rolling. And then once you're in that mode of finishing, that's when you turn to the deeper project that has more meaning, that you would really, really enjoy finishing and feel really rewarded by in the end. And so I recommend starting with either a class or a finished project that just sounds fun and that feels doable. So something that's more bite-sized, something that you can kind of really put a container around and finish in the time that you have allowed. All right. Ooh, we've got lots more questions here. All right. Monica asks, when finishing a project, how do you keep from getting behind on other projects? So I answered some of that in Judy's question, but I will also say is that I don't. We're always going to be behind on everything. And then oftentimes it's a mindset to say, I'm not behind, I'm just where I am, I'm going to keep going. And that's when you set new due dates, you adjust things, you have to, everything's always kind of fluid. And life is always going to get in the way of your deadlines and your objectives and your goals. And the more that you can kind of cultivate a sense of resilience to adjust on the fly and keep moving anyway instead of getting stuck, the more you'll be able to do that in the future. And so I don't necessarily not get behind, but when I am choosing to focus and finish on something, I'm making that conscious choice to do this and not all these other things. And that's what every single thing we do in life is. It's always a choice. And in this case, you're choosing to focus in this one area. All right, I hope that's helpful. That was a little awkward answer. All right, Teresa asked, what is your favorite white pen? All right, I can't say I have one that I love, but I will talk about the ones that I do use. So the one you saw in that photo, I'm almost certain was a Sharpie poster paint pen. These can be a little tricky because they can like leak or splatter, or they have a brush tip. And so if you flick it too much, it can kind of spatter. But once you get it going, it can be pretty nice. I have the Tombow Mono Gel Pen, which is okay. I'm recalling that this worked better on cardstock than it did on photos, like dark cardstock. The Uniball Signo, which appears to be completely dried up, is a favorite from the past. The Signo pens in general are very good scrapbooking pens. And yeah, I'm pretty sure this one is completely dried up. This is good. It has a finer tip, but it is a ballpoint pen. And while I want to say that this one worked on photos, it's not a felt or a marker tip that's gonna kind of glide across the paper as well. I don't believe Alley or American Crafts / Studio Calico has white pens, but these two pens from Alley, the gold and the silver, these are awesome. I love these for writing on photos, and I would say that these are the ones that I use the most, or will be using the most in my December daily, and have used the most for writing on photos these days. They're not white, but they show up really well. And if they ever come out with a white one in these that works well, then I think that would be the best. And this it's that like marker tip, so it really glides well. And this is really similar to the, oh, I forgot the name of them. So American Crafts has two types of pen. They have the precision pens, which don't work on all photos, but then they have these other pens that do work really well on photos. And this is, I think, from that line. All right. All right, Susan is going to be completing 3 pages for 2014 to make that year's December daily complete. I can't wait to hear how it goes, Susan. Thanks for sharing. All right, a couple more questions. Have you considered, instead of doing a mini album, just adding holiday pages into your yearly album by Library of Memories topics? So that's what I tried to do in 2014. And as you guys know, like, the rest of my 2014 album is totally finished. I've blogged about it. All my project life is done. I don't think I even have any gaps left in the layouts. Like 2014 is done except for these sad holiday pages. So for some reason that didn't work in terms of the finishing, but that doesn't mean that I don't like the idea of it. And I would say in a year in which you don't have a lot of time, money, energy to invest in a whole mini album, and I would say mostly like that, the time and focus. If you don't think you can make it a priority during that season, you probably shouldn't do a mini album, and that's okay. Then you should, incorporate it into the rest of your scrapbooking and just do something special within your regular album. And I think it's a totally acceptable, wonderful approach, and it's up to you to figure out what's going to work best for you in this particular season of your life. All right. All right, looks like Kathy here more has a comment, but I want to share it with you guys. Wow, you touched on my biggest problem, unfinished or unstarted classes. I have so many resources from membership groups, as well as purchase classes, but usually opt to make instead of learn. Like your idea of picking something fun. So I have a couple related ideas here because I've been working on a class for our members about the Creative Hub. And the Creative Hub is basically a planner for your scrapbooking. And what I'm doing is I'm going to be teaching you how to use either Asana, a regular planner, a bullet journal, or our own Scribble Scrapper printable planning pages to put together your Creative Hub. And one of those areas is classes. And this is a place where you can kind of designate, okay, these are the classes that everything that I've accepted for free or purchased, and then you can mark off what's finished, And you can even mark off ones that you want to say, I am done enough with this. So I created a category for me in Asana that's called I'm done enough with this. I got what I needed to out of it. And Kathy, you mentioned that you opt to make instead of learn. And I would say there's some people that spend time during a class learning, just kind of absorbing the material, and then don't necessarily make the project that's featured. And I want to say that's 100% okay solution. You know, every single education opportunity is going to give you something a little bit different. And sometimes it's absorbing and learning and being a part of a community, and that's what you get from it. And sometimes it's doing a project, starting or finishing a project. And sometimes it's both, but you get to say what's done for you. It's not necessarily dotting every I and crossing every T. And I'm so glad that you like the idea of picking something fun. Too often, you know, this is a very personal, it's such an important hobby. That's why it's so different from other crafts like knitting and, you know, even card making isn't quite as personal as scrapbooking your own photos, your own feelings and memories. And we get so tied into those that the heart places behind that, which is great, but that's part of what prevents us from moving forward sometimes. And when you can tap into that fun and the idea of play and creative fulfillment and just taking that time to be a kid again with, you know, papers and scissors and glue, that's when you can get the momentum going to finish some of those bigger projects. All right, guys, that is all the questions here. Let's check out the comments. Looks like a lot of you are interested in finishing your December dailies as well. Natalie is going to finish finish an album for her middle son. Teresa's going to finish her daughter's engagement and wedding album. She's already halfway through. All right. I want to thank you guys so much for joining me for our very first session of the Festival of Finishing. I am so looking forward to next week where we will dive in a little further and I will share my progress as we move throughout the festival. If you're watching this in replay, I want to encourage you to choose one project that you're going to finish by October 18th and keep it doable, keep it simple, and keep it fun. And I will see you guys next week. Again, my name is Jennifer Wilson, and I am so thrilled that I get to be here with all of you awesome scrapbookers every week on Simple Scrapper Live. Have a good one.